Justin from Bad Math Brewing, and today I'm going to be talking about the Spike Flex Plus fermenter. So, looking at the Spike Flex Plus, you probably wonder what's the advantage of it. Well, it's not quite a full conical, but it's probably at the higher end of the stainless steel bucket style fermenters. I personally have had mine for a little over a year now, and I'm very happy with it. It's a very good product, high quality, and it fits really well in what I want to use it for. If you haven't had a chance, check out my other video. It's reviewing the Firmzilla from Kegland, which is a little bit different. It is a conical, it's plastic, but it's also really nice fermenter, but I use it a little differently. For the Spike Flex Plus, I think what it does really well, but I have a specific way that I use it in my brewing setup. Just as an overview, as I mentioned in my other video, I've used various other brewing vessels. Before I bought my Spike Flex Plus, I was using a different bucket style fermenter, the Anvil, and it was a really nice product, but it really didn't fit what I needed to do. Before I used the Anvil, had a pony keg with a transfer rig and everything mounted to it, and it had its advantages, but it was kind of a pain to clean, especially with the little Sankey opening on the top. And when I went from it to the Anvil, I realized how much I had really gotten accustomed to using CO2 pressure to transfer beer. When I cold crash, I could just put a few pounds of pressure on the fermenter and then let it cold crash, and wasn't worried about it sucking back in sanitizer through the blow off or sucking in air through the S-lock I had on it. So that kind of led me to start looking at my other options, and I don't have the space to have a full conical or necessarily the free funds to pay for something that, because they're usually a little more expensive. But it turned out the Spike Flex Plus kind of fit in with my brewing. It's more expensive, but it's well worth it in my opinion. One of the cool things with the Spike Flex series is there's the Flex Plus that I have, and then there's the regular Flex fermenter, and it's a little less than the Flex Plus, and it's not pressure capable. But if you are kind of unsure of whether or not that's a big deal to you, you can start with the Flex fermenter, and then you can purchase from Spike the accessories to make it pressure capable over time if that's what you want to do. So that's kind of cool. And on Spike's website, they offer a lot of different accessories. The fact that all the openings on the fermenter, the ports on the front and on the top are tri-clamp fittings gives it a lot of flexibility. You have a lot of options in which you can purchase to use in conjunction with that fermenter. As you'll see a little later in the video, I'll kind of show you what I have mine set up and outfitted with. But looking at it, kind of what the pros and the cons are, like I said, the biggest thing for me is it's a pressure capable vessel. Primarily what I use this fermenter for are beers that I'm not specifically looking to dry hop, because like I said in my other video, the Firmzilla that I have is usually what I use to dry hop. With the Spike Flex Plus, there's not really a good way to pull out trub and yeast of the fermenter while you're fermenting. The dry hopping, there's a large port going into the vessel that you can open up to dry hop, but I like to eliminate as much as possible getting oxygen into the beer when I do dry hopping and anything on the cold side. So I don't like doing it that way. I prefer using my Firmzilla, which has, you know, the collection jar. And if you want to check out the video, I go into more depth about it. But so I'd say that might be the drawback, is it doesn't offer necessarily all of the things you get out of a conical fermenter. But on the plus side, like I said, it's pressure capable. You have all of the tri-clamp fittings on it, so it's easy to add sample ports and temperature probes, and they have their spunding valve, but there's other accessories you can use. I saw recently that I think Brewers Hardware is one, and there might be others, are making some rigs that you can use to do low oxygen dry hopping. It's essentially a butterfly valve, a sight glass, and a spunding valve where you can purge the oxygen out of it and then open it into the fermenter, so you're not getting any extra oxygen going into it when you're doing your dry hopping. But that's not really what I use that fermentation vessel for, so I don't worry about it that much. So again, it's kind of at the higher end of the scale when you look at the price, but the quality, the materials, having again all the tri-clamp fittings on it, the Flex Plus itself comes with the butterfly valve, and that really, I feel, makes it worth it. There are some less expensive options, but they don't really have necessarily all the flexibility that the Spike Flex Plus has. So like I said, I'm pretty happy with it. If you're in the market for a fermenter, you're kind of looking at what your options are, and you have the money to consider the Spike Flex Plus as an option, I definitely would encourage you to check it out. I ended up purchasing mine from, they have what they call their bargain cave, and their open box, scratch and dent type things, and I'll put in a few pictures here. When I got mine in, it didn't say specifically whether it was just an open box or whatever, but there were no scratches, no dents, no signs of wear, so I don't know if it was just an open box or not, but I was really happy with how it came in and the condition it was in. It looked brand new to me, so I was super happy with that. Okay, so I'm going to show you real quick how I generally take samples and everything with this fermenter. At this point, this beer, it's a Bock, Hellas Bock that I dry hopped in. It's been crashed down to 40 degrees for a few days now, so I just wanted to take a sample and see how it's tasting and everything. So here I have, which again, I'll take it out so you can see it better, of course, and there'll be a link for it. This is the sampling port I have for this fermenter that I purchased from Amazon. Just sitting in some sanitizer. I'll go ahead and put that together. Then you can, I'll move the camera a little bit so you can see. I have just a little I think 9-inch pan I use, so that catch anything that kind of drips out while I'm sanitizing the valve and all that kind of stuff. So grab my sanitizer, pull tri-clamp off. Oop. There it goes. I'll sit that in my sanitizer so I get the gasket off. All right. So make sure I get that pretty good with sanitizer. Try to clamp itself also. Before I started, I put about 12 pounds of pressure on the fermenter with my CO2 tank. That's all together. I'll show you real quick. You can see that the handle for the butterfly clamp is tilted to the side. And if you look, what's kind of nice about this, the pickup on this tank is it has this little nub, so that shows you which direction the pickup is facing. So since I'm just trying to get an idea of how it's tasting and everything, I want to make sure I'm getting clean beer and not a bunch of yeast. So I'll grab my cup here that I have for any of the yeast and everything that might be in there. Just kind of crack that and close this. And then I'll get my little sample cup here. Put myself a little bit. Still a little hazy, but it's a dry hopped lager, so I'll be giving it plenty of time to clear up and everything, and then I'll be fining it after I can finish cold crashing it too. So that's pretty much it. I'll take this back off. Catch all that beer that spills out of there. Drop that down in there. Same with some sanitizer. Pretty good. And pop the cap back on there. That's it. If I position the fermenter in there correctly, I can actually get the door for my fermentation chamber closed with that sample port on there, but since I don't use it to transfer beer or anything, I just take it off. So that's just the process I go through for pulling samples off of the Flex Plus, and works pretty good for me. Alright, so I'm going to disconnect my blow off tube. My oxygen, or my CO2 valve is closed for the time being. Go ahead and connect that. Going to loosen the lid but not take it off, just so the top doesn't fly off if there's any pressure buildup. Alright, so got a little CO2 come out there, but that's fine. Take that off. And here with the little sandy since I taken it off for now. Set it here. Here's my 1 ounce of Centennial that's going in there. I'm going to open this back up. That's just the CO2 creeping out of there. Dump that in. Put that clamp back on. And go ahead and close that now. And I'll probably get a little splash in here since there's a little pressure. Y'all lid off, dry hop's done, and it's pretty easy. All right, so on my keg here, I have just my spunding valve connected to my gas out. So that way, theoretically, the beer foams less as it's going into, because going in under pressure. I usually keep it around 8 or 9 psi or so while it's filling. And according to some studies, I do that because the foam forming proteins and everything, once it forms the foam, it's gone. So theoretically, if you do a lot of foaming going out of your fermenter into your keg, it won't have as good at foam and head retention when you're pouring it into your glass. So everything's clean, sanitized. I'm gonna go ahead and open up the front of this here. Just cleared the camera. And I'm gonna pop this cover off, grab my gasket, everything pretty good with sanding. And I have, let me put this on. So I'm going to leave the door open. I'm going to go ahead and turn the fermenter off. Sorry, crashed and everything, so it's not going to warm up while I'm transferring. I'll go ahead and hook up my CO2 at about 10 psi. Generally works pretty well for transfers. Open up the valve. I have this little guy I got from brewhardware.com, and it goes from your ball lock to, this is actually a cam fitting, but it's super easy to pull in and out of the ball lock, and I can spray out any tube or anything that's in the fermenter before I hit clean beer. So I need to grab a glass so I can do that. One of the other nice features of this fermenter is that it has a racking arm. So right here, I'll take a picture of it, put it in this video. It has a little nub showing which way the racking arm is facing inside the fermenter. So if you have a lot of trube and you know, debris that's in the bottom of your fermenter, you want to make sure that doesn't get into your beer, you can just turn the racking arm a little bit. I have, it's just like a little piece of half-inch stainless steel tubing. Helps you get a little more leverage on it. You just loosen the valve just a hair so you can adjust it. And then you can make sure, for me, usually about there, I don't know, it's like maybe 4 o'clock or so, I don't get any, pick up any trube or anything out of the beer, and I'll start there, and you can see through your hose if you're still clear, and just tilt it back down until you make sure you get the most beer out of the fermenter without picking up any nasty stuff that'll get into your keg or even possibly clog your poppets while you're transferring. So have this guy on here, things pressurized, so I'm gonna pump this up just a hair. Then put this up here so you can see what I'm doing. It looks pretty good. Beer's clearing the line, and I think we'll ready to start the transfer. So my beer's clear, everything looks good. Building a little pressure on the spunding valve, and once it hits around, like I said, 8-9 psi or so, I'll adjust it so it starts bleeding off air. But transfer is going, and here in a little bit I'll be all caked out. Alright, so I got all my beer transfer and everything, and now I'm going on to cleaning. So I just wanted to show a picture with, taking everything apart. And I know there are some people who do like a CIP process. You can kind of set that up if you like to. I always think it's better to take everything apart. That way you can inspect everything. You can make sure all the gaskets for the tri-clamps look good. Make sure that everything's actually clean and it's not that big or bulky to take apart. So I'm going to go ahead and clean everything out, put it back together, put some sani in it, and get ready to transfer the beer I'm brewing right now into the fermenter. Alright, again, thanks a lot for checking out the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you want to check out my bio, I have a link to my Instagram page there. I post a little more there than I do here on YouTube with some of the projects and experience I have going on in my brewing. And also, if you'd like, you can send me an email, badmathbrew@gmail.com, and take care. Happy brewing, everyone.